Assad's human rights record is in no way in question. But it's interesting to watch the PR push and reflect on what Assad is saying. We have some sound of him from Charlie Rose, and then after that, I'm going to read a follow-up quote of another thing he said in the interview. But I think we'll start with the sound. Here he is talking with Charlie Rose.
There is an intense discussion going on about all the things we're talking about in Washington, where if there's a strike, it will
Just
eliminate.
pause it. Assad was educated as a medical doctor in London, so he speaks English. So that's him speaking. There isn't a translator. Sorry, go ahead.
The United States decision to do this. What do you want to say? It's a very important week in America and in Washington to the American people, to members of Congress, to the President of the United States.
I think the most important part of this now is, let's say, the American people, but the polls show that the majority now don't want a war anywhere, not only against Syria. But the Congress is going to vote about this in a few days, and I think the Congress is elected by the people and represent the people and work for their interests. The first question that they should ask themselves, what do wars give America? Since Vietnam till now, nothing. No political gain, no economic gain, no good reputation. The United States is at all time, the credibility is at all-time low. So this war is against the interests of the United States. Why? First of all, because this is the war that's going to support Al-Qaeda and the same people that kill Americans in the 11th of September. The second thing that we want to tell to the Congress that they should ask, and that's what we expect them to ask this administration about the evidence that they have regarding the chemical story and allegations that they presented.
I think that's a fascinating clip for a couple of different reasons, and some extremely disturbing ones. One, again, off the top, Assad is equating a lot of things here that should not be equated. A lot of the rebels and opposition forces working against Assad are certainly not Al-Qaeda. And what started in Syria as a genuine democratic uprising due to the horrible politics of the regime, as well as to other factors like the economic and climate change factors that Sam has highlighted, has turned into this broad, diverse, multifaceted thing, which really essentially with all the factions fighting is both a civil war within Syria and also a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Russia obviously has a significant stake there. The Gulf states, besides Saudi Arabia, do, and the United States apparently thinks it does as well. What's disturbing to me is that while Assad is really cynically using this argument, and again, I think it cannot be emphasized enough how much of a butcher he is, the reality is that over the past couple of years, as this conflict has metastasized, Al-Qaeda is a presence in Syria. There is a real presence of those fighters, particularly in the north of the country. Number three, we talk about blowback, and we talk about credibility. We talk about, preserving American status in the world. I think that there is no better indictment of American status when a third-rate, trust fund baby dictator who is brutally savaging his country to protect himself and his, small networks can go out on Charlie Rose and give a pretty accurate diagnosis of the problems in American foreign policy and how low we've slipped in the world. That's the problem. The problem is why is this critique so easy to make, even if it's being made cynically by Assad? And going into Syria with no plan and no strategy and rejecting the possibility that Russia may be facilitating at least some type of progress with the chemical weapons is not helpful at the very least. So I think those are some takeaways from the interview. The last thing, a quote from Assad, which is pretty disturbing. Rose pushed him on what his government forces have done. And again, this is really important, I think, to highlight because these things began before this conflict was heavily militarized. This was a nonviolent uprising. Assad threw tremendous brutality back at it. And Rose pushed him on the brutality of his regime. And Assad disputed the description of him as an aggressor and likened himself to a doctor saving a patient. He said, quote, "A doctor who cuts the leg to prevent a patient from gangrene if you have to. We don't call him a butcher, we call him a doctor, and we thank you for saving lives. When you have terrorism and you have war, when you have a war, you always have innocent lives that could be victims of any war." And I think that that's revealing, obviously, of Assad's mentality and his previous medical training. But there's not much to add to that. I just thought that quote was chilling. But I think that the context around what's happening here is such that if we're rejecting diplomatic possibilities on the chemical weapons front, and someone like Assad, who can cynically go out on U.S. television and make a case that sounds reasonable, that's the underlying crisis in American foreign policy that needs to be addressed immediately. And launching a unilateral strike without much strategy behind it seems to me to be really foolish.